if you're having coaching conversations with people on a regular basis, then you can be extremely honest with them because the intent is to help them grow, not to put something in their HR file. If you're managing people, you will subconsciously take on their problems. They will leave them with you. If you're a coach, you're going to help that person solve their problems and let them solve the problem.
Hey there, we are so excited about this episode because we are talking about the state of company culture, and I am joined by Tony Ferraro. Tony, so fun to see you again.
Yes, great to be here. Totally excited about this topic today. It's the fruit of a lot of our labor for a long period of time, so I'm stoked.
Yeah, and it's an episode that we've been talking about doing for the past couple months, and we finally are making it happen. So very excited about it. And for those of you that don't know, Tony is our director of coaching here at Floyd. And so we have some really good information to dig into with you today. So we launched this culture assessment back in 2020, which is wild. We were just looking at like the first person that filled one out, and I can't believe it's been 5 years.
Oh,
it's crazy.
It is crazy.
5 years. And it was after Matthew published The Culture Solution. So Matthew came out with this book, The Culture Solution. Again, I can't believe how long it's been. It feels like it just came out. And in the book, Matthew shares the 6 principles of a dynamic culture. And from that book, we really wanted to provide a resource for people to really assess where they were in their company culture, right? I mean, if someone asked, if on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your culture? Of course, you're going to have an answer, but would it be your team's answer? Would those align? And also, what is culture, right? Like what actually is culture? And so that's what I love about the Culture Solution. Matthew really lays out the 6 immutable principles of a dynamic culture. And what's so cool about the assessment that we created is not only do you get a culture score, so you'll get a score of your overall company culture, but you also get a score of each of the 6 principles that Matthew lays out in his book, which is so fun because then you get to take this assessment, you get your culture score, and then you get to see where you ranked highest and lowest on the 6 principles. And then from there, you can then take that data and figure out, okay, how am I going to get better? How am I going to turn a 6 into a 7, then a 7 to an 8, and then keep moving forward? And so it gives you the kind of the starting point where you are, and then how to work towards a better culture. And if there's one thing that we have recognized in the people that we work with is that you guys get that culture is important. Like that you understand. You would not be listening to this podcast if you didn't believe that. And so we want to help you go from that good to a great culture. So this culture assessment that we created, we have been able to dig into all of the data, dig into the resources. We've had about 1,500 people take the assessment. And so collectively, we're going to look through that data and give you guys some insight into, okay, what are we seeing among our clients? And before Tony and I jumped on, we were talking about how interesting it is because, again, the people taking the culture assessment, it's a little biased because we know that you care about your culture. So take that into consideration when you're listening to these results. These are people that really care about culture, which is interesting when we're going to dig into the numbers because even when you care about culture, there's still a lot of room for improvement. Yeah. So let's dig into, Tony, I know you have some thoughts on, we each kind of took a little bit of time, looked at the results, wanted to kind of dig into what were some of our findings, what are some things that stood out to us. And in fact, before we even do that, I thought it would be kind of fun for people listening. Now, most people are listening, they're driving, they're in their car, they're not sitting down like, let's take out a piece of paper and draft something up. But I do think it'd be fun to, because we'll start with the 6 principles and kind of gauge the highest, like what people rank the highest and then what people kind of rank the lowest. So I'm going to read the 6 principles. And if you're listening right now, which you are because you're hearing my voice, you are going to, of the 6 principles, think about which one you would rate the highest for your organization. All right, so principle number 1, make culture a priority. Number 2, mission is king. Number 3, overcommunicate the plan. Number 4, hire with rigorous discipline. Number 5, let people know what you expect. And number 6, grow your people by creating a coaching culture. So of those 6 principles, where do you think your organization would rank the highest out of 10? And now, Tony, let's talk about the highest and lowest of the 6 principles.
Right. So, and we should also ask people to pick their lowest.
And pick your lowest,
also,
yes.
We're going through there. Yeah. It's interesting. The principle that rated the highest, and actually significantly, was principle number 2, which is mission is king. And so basically around that is people have an understanding, number 1, what their mission is at the organization. And number 2, what their role does or plays in fulfilling the mission. So it's their submission, underneath the mission. So people understand what they're doing, how it affects the mission of the organization. So on average, people 71 out of 100 was the largest on that number. That was the highest score, the highest rate on there. So, or 7.1 out of 10, depending on how you want to look at that. Now, one of the interesting things on this in relationship to mission statement. So I went back and looked at the questions, and I'm not going to scroll through it here, but while that's one of the highest, it is the highest area, the highest rated area. One of the questions that received the lowest response was, I'm real confident I can name my company's mission statement. So I don't think, so you might think, well, how does that jive up? I think what that speaks to, and as we go around, we do training, because when we're doing the training, it's one of the things we ask people, can you write the mission statement? I think it speaks towards, a good company. While the mission statement is important, right? It's understanding really what the mission is a little bit more than the words. A little bit. Now, right off of that, and my bias on this, I think the reason there's that big disjoint is that most mission statements are wrong, or a better way to put it, most of them are way too wordy, include way too much. And so it's impossible for people to name to write the mission statement. So it's one of the things we talk about with clients. I mean, how crystal clear can you get about your mission? And so that's the interesting part. So it's not so much about mission statement, although you need to have, and it's a good thing to have conversations about that. What we see is that people have an understanding of what the mission of the company is. I guess the negative person could say, well, maybe people they have their own idea of what the mission is. So obviously they're going to rate that highest because they feel like they know the mission, whether it's the mission of the company or not. But I do think that most people understand the mission of the organization. It certainly speaks to the idea of, we don't need to have another retreat on creating the mission statement, but we need to have a lot of conversations around what really is our mission, in the organization. That's what I think that speaks to.
Yeah. And actually it's interesting because the lowest, and we won't share it just yet, but it's with your mission, it should be talked about enough that everyone knows, and everyone should be able to say it. When it is so crystal clear and simple, you're not going to forget it because it's ingrained in you and you talk about it a lot. It's like people, you can't not know what it is. And with kind of like strategic plans, so often we feel like we have to make it just all this business. It's almost like we're trying to sound smart. Like we want to sound smart in our mission and our strategic plan and where we're going, when really it's not, like simple. Like simple is what works. Simple is what is memorable. And simple is what can be even more powerful. I often quote that it's when you say, I would have written a shorter note, I just didn't have the time. It takes a lot of time to figure out, take that long mission statement that you have and condense it into a short statement that is not only meaningful. I mean, we're not doing it for the sake of remembering. It should be meaningful. It should be powerful. It is the thing that we are working towards. And when you see organizations that have a really strong mission, you can tell their culture almost immediately because people, they know, like they're behind the mission. They believe in the mission.
Absolutely. Most mission statements have the number of parts of a mission statement is in direct correlation to the number of people in the conference room at the time it's created. So you take everybody's idea, you put some commas between it, you've got your mission statement.
Boom, boom, boom.
Yes, but and it's probably fair to say, somebody might be saying, well, okay, what's your mission statement? If you're look, mission statement of Floyd Consulting is
we grow people.
We grow people, and that's it.
That's it. Simple, simple. And I will say one of our values at Floyd, and one that is in Matthew Kelly's work all over, is simplicity. Like, just simplicity in this world where we tend to glamorize complexity and wanting to have more. This idea of simplicity, it's just, it's really a breath of fresh air when somebody can say something so succinctly that way.
Yep.
All right. So that is what was ranked the highest. Now let's go to what was ranked the lowest on the 6 principles.
Yep. I don't think there's any surprise here because consistently when we talk to clients, it's usually the area they feel like they need the most help on. And that is principle number 4, hire with rigorous discipline. So the idea, and within that, the several questions that lead up to that are really asking about a hiring process and how structured, how solid, how involved is your hiring process. And that's what the question is. And most folks, the great majority of people, feel like they don't have a good hiring process. And that's true not just on our assessment, but I was looking up some other statistics, and absolutely people feel like they don't have a strong hiring process, or they don't have a consistent hiring process. That may be even more than a strong one. You may have one and it looks great in the HR book, but you actually stick to it when you come to hiring. It's interesting. If you're unstructured, I just read this yesterday. If you have an unstructured hiring process, those tend to have about a 20% success rate for people hired in an unstructured hiring process. If you don't have a structured hiring process, 1 in 5 of the people that you hire is going to work out. Now, that person's great. Wow. That's great. But you've got some, that's some trouble on that. So it's clearly, people's ears perk up when we start talking about this and it's probably had the biggest impact, of folks who originally took this assessment and then became clients of ours. This area, it really is the quickest that you can implement and see change right away in your cultures, hiring people. Because look, as much as the other thing, all the things about culture revolve around people. So the people that you bring in and then how you evaluate those people and grow those people are going to determine your culture. Nothing else. We won't go over the whole thing, but it's not bringing your dog to work and it's not all the other perks that go into it. It is all about people. And so getting the right ones into your organization is so important. So it didn't surprise me that was actually the lowest one.
Yeah. So Tony, I'm always fascinated because this is no surprise. I'm sure this is no surprise if you're listening. We know that hiring is important. We know we should have a process in place. We understand, like, when we talk about it, it makes sense, right? Oh, your organization can only be the best version of itself to the extent your people are becoming better versions of themselves. And we all nod, but our actions don't always reflect that way of thinking. And so we've worked with quite a few organizations to help them with their hiring process. So what do you see in these leaders when they bring us in? Like, why have they not yet put together a structured hiring process? Is it they don't know how? Is it because they don't believe that it's that important? Like, where is the disconnect?
Yeah. Well, the easy answer, and I know you get mad at the slide I have in the trainings. Basically, it's because we're lazy, but I want to be fair. I mean, let's think about this practically. Why it seems so intuitive to have a process in here, then why do we not follow it? Why do we not have a, well, think about what's actually going on. Okay, maybe I'm a manager and I've got a hole in my team. I've got to hire somebody. Well, the reality probably is that I'm probably doing some of the work of the person I need to hire because there's a vacancy, or my team is all doing it and they're getting fried trying to do it. So there's typically some deficiency going on and there's pain associated with that deficiency. So what we want to do is we want to get out of that pain as soon as possible, which means I need to put a body in that chair so that I don't have to do all this work. I've already got my job and I'm doing, a third of another job in there. So that's typically where things come in. And, and some of it is valid. If you're in a service industry, you have to have people to service clients, right? If you're, we do some work with schools. In August, my experience has been that parents tend to prefer that there be a teacher in the classroom on the first day of school. That can short circuit a hiring process because we just have to get this done. It's fair to give people a little bit of grace in terms of why this happens. So that's that. Now, back to your point, or your question rather, which was, what do we see? We see either no real process or the process isn't followed, and it's kind of dependent upon, as I said, the position. So really getting clear about the role, that's the first thing. Can I create a role description, not a job description, because people want a role in the mission, not just going to a job every day. The number one thing we see coming in is people aren't really crystal clear about what the role is and what the mission of that position is. You have to know what you're hiring to know who you're going to hire to fill that role. And that always spurns some great conversations with folks. What are the outcomes that we're absolutely looking for? And then the second part to that is, what are the characteristics of the person for that role and for our company? If you get those things clear, this is what that role entails, and this is the type of person we want, then it really makes your process a lot more, it just opens the door to the process. But if you're not clear with those, I don't care how good your process is, how many interviews you do, you're not going to find the right people because you don't know what you're looking for. That sounds pretty simplistic, but it's hard to find something you don't know what you're looking for. So that's number one. And then the second thing is people are not good at interviewing. They think they're good at interviewing. They're good at talking. We're all good at talking, right? But the best interviewers are the ones that can just keep quiet and just ask a question and be quiet and let the person, because in the process, people will tell you everything you need to know if you make them comfortable enough and you allow them to speak and you don't try to sell the position while you're interviewing someone. So that's part of it. We don't interview well and we don't know what we're looking for. And
oh my gosh. Yeah. And this is why when we have a role and look, I mean, if you lead a team, you've been in this situation, right? You're like, I know we need someone, let's hire. And we want to just hire. But again, it goes back to that taking the time to create a role description, to create a scorecard. It's work. It takes work. And so we might think, oh, I want to hire a marketing manager. What does that mean? Like, what exactly is that person going to do? And I think we get so caught up in, oh, well, we'll bring them on board and then we'll figure it out. Or we'll bring them on and we know we have enough work. And so I think I've seen leaders do this where they think they need more people than they actually do. And so they start hiring and now you have people on the team and you don't have enough work to do. And now you're realizing, oh, I shouldn't have even hired this person. And what's so interesting is how the leader and the person you hired usually know within a very short time frame, this was not a good fit.
Right.
Like this wasn't the right thing to do. But because we are rushing to just make it happen and get it done, you look past some of those red flags. You look past some of the things that you really could have caught had you had a process. And Tony, I know you've experienced this where you have been in rooms where you've been the only one who has pushed back on a candidate. Like everyone's like, this is the person, let's make it happen, let's do it. And you, as a leader, like it takes some courage to stand up and say, I don't know, I don't think, and this is why. Right.
No, absolutely. And your process will help with that because I've been in that exact situation. I've been in situations where, there's been great conversation around the scorecard and because the opposite's been true too. I've really thought for whatever reason got enamored with somebody and someone else on the hiring team brings up something. I didn't even think about that because we bring our biases to hiring. And so part of the process is I wanted to hire this person so badly that I overlooked some things. So that's where the hiring process comes in. And, starting right at the beginning, if you're wondering, we want everybody to take this assessment. We'll show you how to do it. But if you're wondering right now, okay, while I'm driving, I don't know if our hiring process is any good. How do I know? There is a simple test, and it's to think of your team, think of your entire team, and go down person by person and just ask yourself 2 questions. With all the information you have right now, would you hire them again today? And the second question is, if each one of them came into your office and said, look, I found something else, I'm going to be leaving the company, how would you feel? And that's where I'll just say that to folks sometimes and they'll go, oh my gosh, that person came in and make my week. So when you look at that and go, did I make good hires? And so take an honest look. That takes a lot of humility. We've messed this up in the past. We really got to get clear on this because we also know that once you have somebody in, it is hard to get rid of them, whether that's legally hard to get rid of them if you're in that, that sort of environment, but just emotionally it's hard. And there's tons of statistics about the cost of replacing people, but just the toll it takes on people to strike out on a hire, it just disrupts everything. And you do too many of them, people are like, I don't think these folks know what they're doing. This is like the 3rd or 4th bad hire, that they brought in. So all those are a play, and all that comes into, the hiring process, which also kind of transition in the next, the kind of sandwiched around the hiring process. The 2 other questions that had the lowest were principle 3, over communicating the plan, and principle 5, let people know what to expect. Both of those speak to your ability to not just communicate, but to know what you're talking about and have a clear picture, because you can communicate the wrong thing. and basically what you'd be communicating is you don't know what you're talking about. But, that idea, letting people know what to expect. So once you hire someone, then do you have a clear idea what they're supposed to be doing? And more importantly, do they have a clear idea of not even what they're supposed to be doing, I misspoke, but what the outcomes are going to be, what they should be. And that's another thing that we see with folks is they don't have really clear outcomes defined for the people that they hire. We can talk about that in a moment here about scorecards, but that's definitely, and then, you can speak to this, Kate, about over communicating the plan. How many times do you have to say something before it sticks?
Too many, so many. Well, that's why I was saying with mission is the highest rated, and then you have hiring is the lowest, and then there's the over communicate the plan that was in spot number 3. And I thought that was interesting with mission and over communicate the plan, because again, it's just that constant, this is where we're going, this is the direction. And the over communicate the plan piece that is interesting, especially when we work with organizations, is people either have a strategic plan and it is full of a lot of words that don't really mean anything to people, and they take a year or they take a day or 2 and they work on it and they're so proud of it, and then they stick it in a drawer because it doesn't really say anything. It's just full of, it looks good. If you handed it to someone, they'd be like, oh, this company knows what's going on. But if we're not actually using the plan, what good is that? And then you have the other side where people don't even have a plan. So obviously, this is where there's a lot of disconnect, because now people are not sure where it is that they're going. So we don't have a plan as a whole organization, followed by the role descriptions, the scorecard, and this is how my contribution, this is what when I come to work and this is what I'm doing in my role, this is how it helps move the plan forward. We need both of those things, because one of the things that we need as human beings, and we talk about this when we talk about dreams, achieving a dream is incredible, but so is making progress. Making progress on your dream, making progress in an organization with the role that you're in, and seeing that you're able to achieve things together, that's going to help people stay engaged. If people are just showing up at work and they don't see how what they're doing contributes to the overall mission and vision of the company, it can be really challenging to stay connected. And so when you're in that leadership role, over communicate. We always say, leaders will say to us, I've told this person 10 times. I don't understand how many more times I have to say it. Well, more than 10.
At least one more.
at least one more time. And that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to have to over communicate. I mean, I even see this even if you look around in media, whether you're following an author or someone online that you really love, people are saying the same thing in different ways. Like we have to hear things, even in marketing, right? What do they say? You have to see something 7+ times in order for you to take action. So you're getting an email and it's written in this way. And now you're saying it, but in a different way on your social media post or something. So we see this all over where people are over communicating in order for people to really, truly understand. And I know that there has been leaders in my life who have communicated with me, over communicated with me, and still it was months later and I thought, oh, now I really understand. Like I thought I understood, but now I truly understand. And so that is what we get to do for our teams, for our people, is just that can continue. Why do you think, Tony, that leaders are so hesitant to want to over communicate?
Well, I think there's one, the fear of like, I don't want to beat a dead horse. I've said this before, those sorts. That's one thing. The other one is that there isn't a plan. And that's where we talk about simplifying this plan. One of the things about the principle of over communicating the plan is that it does help you avoid chasing shiny objects. It plays a big part in decision making. Hey, we have this opportunity. Should we do it? Well, let's go to our plan. Is this what we said we were going to do? And believe it or not, a good strategic plan on top of a strong mission allows people to pivot. Okay, this is our mission, but we have to do something different to accomplish that mission. So, but I think that's it. I think we just assume that people get it a lot more than they actually do. And then you have to say that, and then you have to act it. You have to be consistent with those things. And so that, and then it's the same thing when we talk to wrap this part up about letting people know what to expect. The clearest example of that is if you're hiring, just use the easy example, a salesperson, we can convince you to create a scorecard. And one of those scorecards says the outcome is that the person will bring in $250,000 of business per quarter. Okay. Then if we're going to do a quarterly review, which we suggest that people do quarterly reviews rather than, the annual review, because they, again, just read that 90% of managers and 90% of HR professionals, this is from a SHRM survey, are frustrated with the annual performance reviews. So 90% of people see these reviews not good, but we're going to do it annually anyway. But you do these quarterly reviews. Back to what I was saying. I hired you, Kate, to be a salesperson for us. And one of the reasons we picked you is somewhere in your past, you showed the ability to bring in our case, $250,000 of sales, whatever your back said, in a quarter. So now it's time for our review. Okay, our quarterly review. The quarter, if my evaluation of you is, are you personable? Have you made enough phone calls? Are you a good team player? All those things might be important, but I hired you to bring in $250,000 of sales for the quarter. That should be the biggest part of your annual review. And it's simple. And then I'm continually amazed about how the people, even when they get scorecards right, their evaluation tool looks totally different than their scorecard. And so you hire somebody, this is why we're hiring them, but this is going to be our scorecard. Oftentimes because like maybe managers do the scorecard and HR people are doing the quarterly evaluations or creating them. So there's that disconnect. So I just think you can save yourself time, effort, and energy and be more effective if you take that hiring scorecard and that becomes then the review for the person on a quarterly basis. And you can do it in a very short amount of time. And everybody knows exactly what's expected of them because it's part of the plan. It's what you hired them for. They know they're going to be evaluated on it. We complicate things so much. People just, particularly A players, they want to know what's the objective? How am I doing?
Yes.
Where's my score? Where's my scoreboard? How's the game going? Where's my scoreboard? That's what A players need to know.
And everyone deserves to know where they stand in an organization. That is just, we should know when you go back home and you're leaving the office, you should feel good about where you are. And we should not be surprised if things are going poorly when you need to have a difficult conversation.
Yep.
Like, those conversations should not be a surprise. And oftentimes they are because of things like an annual review and leaders not coaching, which leads us to the question that I was so happy that was ranked one of the highest which was, I understand that coaching is necessary for an organization to be effective and reach its goals. And that got an average score of 8. So 8 out of 10, which is great because people know, like, we leaders know that we get to coach our people. And we always talk about how coaching is a gift. It really is a gift that we get to give our people. And so coaching allows us to have meaningful conversations with our people on a regular basis so that when you do have those reviews, those quarterly reviews, nothing is unexpected. You're just having a more rich conversation about things that maybe that don't show up on the day-to-day. And that's exciting to see because coaching is, going back to A players, which is who we want to hire, are A players. A players want coaching. They want feedback. They want to get better. They want to grow. And that is what we're all here for. And so I'm happy to see that this score was an 8. However, I would be curious, of the people that ranked at an 8, how many are truly investing in coaching programs for their people?
Yeah. And so, becoming a coaching leader, you make every conversation a coaching conversation. I heard this expression the other day talking about the difference between, say, quarterly evaluations and yearly evaluations, or weekly check-ins and not having weekly, and it was that intent changes honesty. Whether it's the appraisal you're doing of somebody or the conversation you're having changes the honesty. And so oftentimes leaders will, because something is high stakes, they're less honest on it, because it's going to affect, if there's compensation tied to, someone's performance, that's going to affect the feedback you give them. And just as you said, though, if things aren't going well, it's amazing how folks they're not coaching, they're not giving the feedback they need to until it's time to get rid of the person. Then they become overly honest, and it just creates more confusion, more problems. But that's where coaching comes in. If you're having coaching conversations with people on a regular basis, then you can be extremely honest with them, because the intent is to help them grow, not to put something in their HR file.
Yeah.
And if we could just help managers understand it, if you're a coach, you actually take on less work. If you're managing people, you will subconsciously take on their problems. They will leave them with you. If you're a coach, you're going to help that person solve their problems and let them solve the problem. So all of these things, while it seems like an investment, it's an upfront investment, but it saves hours and hours and hours and hours of time. So, and we just found that with our clients. And I think the last thing I'll say on that is while there are 6 different categories, they're very interrelated, and we see that it creates part of this climate or part of this culture that just permeates all the areas. So for example, at a client, one of the things we talk about in hiring is when you get to the point where you're thinking about hiring a candidate, everybody involved needs to be a hell yes on that person. If there's any hesitation, they're a no. So this client adopted that way of thinking, and they've really transformed the hiring in a service industry where it's tough to hire people. They've said no to some bodies that would have solved a temporary problem, but created more long-term problems. But the owner told me, one of my, on my leadership team the other day, we were talking about purchasing something and we weren't quite sure. And he said to me, look, if we can't say hell yes on this, we should say no. So that was on a totally different subject, but these things start to permeate, and it's the way you start doing things. And that's when people pay attention to their culture using the 6 principles of the culture solution, it's a mode of operating, and it permeates, and you go back and forth between all these characters or these areas. And it just tends to create who we are and the way of doing things. And once you get that right, when people go into an organization and they know this is the way we do things here, then it makes it easier to identify people, to evaluate people, to find new people. It just keeps spinning around. And this is ongoing. You never solve it. It's not like, hey, we got a great hiring process, we're done. No, you need to go back and say, okay, let's look at these 5 people we've hired. How did it work out? Maybe we're paying too much attention to this and not. So this is ongoing. But as you said in the beginning, Kate, it's simplified. And, if I, as a leader, know I've got 6 things to pay attention to, I don't have to do them all at once, but these are the 6 things. I'm not going to get distracted. then I have a chance to make some real change in my organization.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's exciting for us when we hear that companies they'll get a bunch of culture solution books and give them out to their team. And they almost do like a little book club and they read it. Because that's the other thing when even talking about overcommunicate the plan, if you're reading the book and now you recognize that, oh, the leadership subscribes to these 6 principles, like this is what we're working towards. Now you're not going to get people questioning some of the decisions that you're making because you're like, oh, mission is king. We're doing this for the mission. And that's the other thing that I love is the book gives you some language. We talk about culture advocates. Even when you're talking about the overcommunicate the plan, we're giving you language to speak to your team so that, we've done trainings where on like the second day, someone will lead and say, oh, I just did this. I'm a culture advocate. And they get all excited because they have new words to use when they're talking about building a great culture. Because when you have those people, like you said, Tony, you got to get the right people. And when you have those right people, and we all want to build that great culture, and then you have these 6 principles to guide you along the way and then consistently get better. We talk about it at Floyd, obviously. I'm like, no, this book, just use the book and it's going to guide you through helping you create that great culture, which is what we see with our clients. If you've never taken the assessment, obviously we invite you to take the assessment because it'll be very eye-opening. You can take it. You can also have your team take it, and maybe you schedule a little luncheon and you get your results and you look through them. It's always interesting to see what your team says versus what you might have said. Let's see how close your scores are. And then also to pick the 1 or 2 areas that you really want to focus on. Oftentimes when we do a training with an organization, they'll take the assessment and then they'll pick, or we'll see in the data, what are the top 2 that we really want to focus on most and start building from there. And so, Tony, how can people take the assessment?
Yeah, you can go to floydconsulting.com/culture, floydconsulting.com/culture. And I'll say this, Kate, we spent a lot of time creating this.
Yes.
This culture. So this is not a lead magnet or something flimsy. It's a 9-page report you get back. It's serious. And because this is serious. I mean, this isn't secondary to your business. This is about making your business more profitable. And it will. I mean, for example, people that are coached in organizations where people feel coached have a 15% lower turnover rate. That's real money. And this is deadly serious things in this book, simple, serious things. And what we're giving you, there's a lot of value to, because not only here's your score, but then we give some tips. There's some things, there's some real simplified things that you can start doing the next day. And then once you take that, if you want to have a conversation with us, so this is serious. It's floydconsulting.com/culture. You just fill it out. It takes right at 4 minutes. 4 minutes and change to fill out, and emailed you get that 8-9 page report, which can be pretty eye-opening.
Yeah. It's a really great report. I remember when we were putting it together, we were very excited. And yes, if you're wondering, Matthew Kelly, we worked on this together with Matthew because it was really important for us to be able to give this resource to our clients so that you can build a great culture. I mean, that's our mission. We grow people. If your people grow, your organization's going to grow. This is just one of the tools that we use in order to do that. And so we hope you take the assessment. And after you take it, like we've talked about, this is what we do. We do one-on-one coaching. We do trainings. In fact, Tony's leaving tomorrow to go to a training with an organization, and really blessed to be able to work with really wonderful leaders who, like we said, they have good cultures and they're just trying to get better. They want to grow. They want to get better. And that's what great teams do. And so if we can be your partner in that, that is why we do what we do. And we would love to speak with you about that. Also, we've talked about a lot of different aspects of culture today. And just so you know, if this is the first time you're listening to the podcast or you haven't listened to all of them, we've done a lot of episodes. Tony, we did one together on hiring, the hiring process, and went a little bit deeper into some strategies that you can use starting today. We have a lot of really great episodes with coaching questions that you can start asking your team. We really, on this show, are trying to provide as many resources as possible for you as a leader to help you grow and help your people grow. So check out some of the previous episodes. Tony, this was so fun. I'm so glad we finally got to make it happen.
Absolutely. Yep. Me too. It's great.
Awesome. So thank you guys so much for listening. We appreciate you. Again, go check out your assessment, floydconsulting.com/culture, and we will see you next time. Until next time, lead with culture.